Welcome to the Copy Talk podcast. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member, FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated. And now, here's your host, Shannon Ross.
Well, happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to Copy Talk. It's
Good
springtime,
morning.
at least for a hot minute.
Almost for
In
a hot
Colorado
minute.
it is.
Good morning, Shants.
I wore a spring shirt today.
You're
because-
Shansta today, by the way. Good
Thank
morning,
you. I like
Shansta.
I think I need a T-shirt that says Shansta.
You do. That's my son's nickname.
It's like an awesome
For you.
gang name.
Really? Well, and you don't
Which
typically like
doesn't fit me,
gang
but,
name.
you know.
That does not fit you at all.
I'll start my own Shansta gang.
There you go. You don't normally like nicknames.
Because they usually are awful. And normally people use them when they like need something for me or have a chore for me to do. And so like anytime I hear that nickname, it makes me want to throw up. But Shansta's kind of fun. And your son came up with that. So I
Yeah,
like
he
that.
did.
How are the donkeys? Do they like the
Pistol
they're
and
not
Pete.
freezing their little
Love
tuchuses
this
off?
weather. It is significant how different they are from a snowy winter, cold day to a beautiful spring. Like they are excited. They are ready to. They're far more friendlier to me. I was telling everybody before the show, they are really like hormonal teenagers. They wake up grumpy. Just give me food and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
They're hangry, and they are highly emotional. And I mean, they are 13 and 15, so I don't know what donkey years are, but I'm telling you.
They're so stinking cute, too.
They're so adorable. I do love them. They have a new treat now, and apparently it's supposed to make them putty in my hands because
Little bribery.
They don't bray yet, and that really bugs me. They've brayed once, and I'm supposed to be their person, so this kind of bugs me. Carrots with the green stems, not just carrots,
Oh.
but the little pointy ones with
Yeah.
the green stems.
Well,
I bought
good luck.
those, and you would have thought that I gave a 5-year-old candy. So yes, I'm bribing them for their love.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyways,
good.
how are
well,
you?
yes,
How's your
I'm
week?
very excited. It's finally March.
Yes.
We're in March.
This is
I
the
know
weather we
in
live
Colorado, for those who don't live out west, it's deceiving because our heaviest snowfall months are usually April and May.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're much more likely to have a white
Bummer.
Easter than you are a white Christmas. So,
Yes.
but I'll take any kind of warm day. I will take
Our Easter dress have to be like long sleeve,
and layered
And
because you just
layered.
really don't know what to
No, so-
expect. So,
yeah.
I'm excited for Easter. We are in the Lent season. Did you give anything up for Lent? Did you decide what to do?
I did.
What'd you pick? Well, you have to share with our audience.
Oh, I am giving up social media, which I know is so generic and not
I have a
original.
couple friends doing that.
But I am giving it up because while I don't post a lot, I've noticed I look through it a lot, right? Like I'm looking through Instagram, I'm scrolling, and occasionally there's some feel good posts. Like there's
Sure.
some great things out there, but for the most part, when I get off my scrolling, I'm not like upset, but I'm not any better. Like it didn't add any value to my life. So,
Yeah.
and I think it becomes so easy to I swear sometimes my eyes start to cross. So I'm giving up Instagram and Facebook.
Good for
I'm
you.
gonna delete them off
For
my
the 40
phone.
days. 40
What about
days
you?
Until Easter. But we're in the center of that. I always go to the food category. I don't know why, because I enjoy food or drinks. So I thought, what are the top 3 things I really like to eat or drink? And I'm kind of on a coffee fast already. So I couldn't do that because that would have been a really
that's
hard
a
one.
good
But I already
one,
did
that's
that.
hard.
I picked bread. So no sandwich. Like if I want a treat, I'll have a sandwich or whatever, but I know bread. So
When you want a treat, you make yourself a sandwich.
yes.
But she loves food.
I do.
She loves food. Her treats are Sammy's sandwiches.
I love I'm the type that, and this is what a lot of people don't realize because I do try to be pretty healthy. But when I have a cheat day, like I go to Arby's or I go to Philly
McDonald's.
cheesesteak sandwiches
Double quarter pounder.
on McDonald's. Like so that is definitely my happy place is to eat those kind of like nasty sandwiches with processed cheese
but
and
you
all
don't
the things.
do that very much.
I do probably once a week. I mean, I look forward to it. Usually Saturday afternoons.
I feel
look
like you're
forward
hiding
to that.
things from
So,
me.
Well, maybe we just need to hang out
If you
together
would
more.
have, if you would have quizzed me on what I thought you gave up for Lent and gave me like A, B, C, D like options, I would
Really?
have never thought bread.
What would you have thought?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I've thought because I knew you wouldn't do it, even though it would be on the list.
Mine was on the list, and then
thought
I
maybe
gave up.
social
22nd. I'm like, no.
No, well,
don't
we
think
have a
so.
trip coming
I
at the end
know.
of March, so that'd be silly.
we had talked about the last couple of shows our strategy around booking a girls' trip, and it is booked.
Yes,
so
it is
we have
booked.
a few more weeks,
Very excited.
but we're very excited.
Yes, which everybody in this room is going to have to help keep me accountable and on budget, that I don't spend off the rails before I go on this trip.
We will be talking about budgeting today.
Might as well segue into it.
We wrap up the Spending for the Ages series that we're in, and budgeting is today, and trips do tend to knock you off the rails. When
I was just telling Ryan and Kelly,
spending.
like, I seem to think that everything in my closet isn't good enough for this trip coming up. So, like leaving this weekend, I'm going on a trip with my husband, and so I seem to think I needed to go buy all the new things, which I don't. So, yes, everybody's going to need to keep me accountable. But I do want to say something. I think we should officially change the title of, I know it's Spending for the Ages, but the kind of subtitle of budgeting, I don't want to call it that.
What do you want to call it?
I would like to call it a spending plan.
Oh,
yes.
That's good.
I just feel like
has
that's
more
more
of a positive
positive
connotation. A spending plan.
Yeah, it doesn't sound.
right.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean because in a spending plan, part of spending can be spending on yourself, and I don't just mean in the way that you go buy stuff for yourself, but also part of budgeting. I know you're going to get to this. Is saving, and so a spending plan also does include saving. So I think that's what we should call it.
I like it
better.
I do too. Hashtag spending plan.
Hashtag spending plan. You'll have to think of
We're
another
stealing
one,
Ryan's
though.
thunder. You'll have to think of another fun one.
Yeah.
So
'Kay.
over the last couple weeks, we've talked about generational spending. What are some of the pitfalls that boomers get in versus Gen Xers versus millennials? And so last show, if you don't know what any of those are, tune into the last show and you'll find out which one you are. And so today we're kind of changing gears a little bit because we all spend money. Boomers and Gen Xers tend to spend it similarly in the same kind of prime categories, where millennials tend to spend it a little differently and kind of categorize spending versus ownership versus renting, that kind of concept. So last show we reviewed quite a bit that millennials like to rent a lot of what they buy, that it's more of a borrow, not so much of a purchase.
Yeah, they don't want to be beholden to it. They're easy,
but they want to live
just get rid
within
of
their
it.
means, which is a good approach. I mean, I'd rather people live in their means than, own a lot of stuff that they can't afford, that they really don't own because the bank owns it through some kind of finance plan,
That's true.
And we can all, we all have categories where we can get off the rails. But I thought it'd be helpful before we go to the spending plan side of things, that we go over some, what are some of the American average spending in these categories? So kind of where we are versus what the experts recommend.
Okay.
Because how are you supposed to know, just because an expert says it, but if, do people do it naturally or not? Or, how are these kind of compiled? So I looked at a couple different consumer spending studies, and housing is the highest average spending category, which makes sense.
Again, amongst all three,
yes.
right? Of the
well,
generations,
this is more American based. It's not so much generational based. However, each of the generations spent most.
I think
on
when
housing,
I looked at all of them, they did.
And Gen Xers spend the most out of the three categories. But 33% on housing, 16% on average transportation, which was a little higher than I thought the average would be. 13% food, 12% on insurance, 8% on healthcare. And healthcare obviously varies because of which age category you fall into generationally. 5% on entertainment. And then there's several categories that are other, like there's miscellaneous, 3%, cash, 3%, kind of have just cash on hand. Apparel is 3%, education average spending for Americans, 2%, and personal care at 1%, which is sad. People, please spend more than one. Like we want to. You need more than 1% of your budget on personal care. Like that's why we highlight sanity spends. And,
mine's more than 1% on my budget.
I think you might
my spending
inverse
plan.
Food and personal care.
Yeah. I don't need to chew. I
You'd rather look pretty.
I will drink my protein shake and I'll drink my vegetables and I will, yeah.
The average income, American income right now is around $78,000 a year, and the average annual spending is about $61,000. That's an average. So,
but this doesn't include do we have anything about like what the categories for saving? Debt payoff?
This is just spending habits.
Just spending habits.
But the experts, so, as we move into, how do we figure out, or, what are some different options out there of how to budget, how to create your spending plan. And, what are some, I highlighted, I researched a few different concepts in this genre, and I really like one in particular above others. Okay. So I mentioned on the very first show of this series, there's the 50-30-20 plan, the 70-20-10 plan, the 80-20 plan.
I'm peeking at your
notes
there's
right now. Several. Well, you probably can't even read my writing.
Not really. No. So, I don't even know. I'm trying.
You can try to.
I can read the numbers.
People never cheated on any of my tests or papers because they couldn't read it. So I really didn't have to worry about that.
I'm curious to know what you
dorks, though,
you were a dork.
You have to study if you're going to do good. You don't study by
share
being
and care,
a leech.
sister. Everybody needs a hand. Okay, so I'm curious. What is your preferred method of creating a spending plan?
Well, I think so. At a kind of a macro level, I really like a holistic view of using budgeting percentages.
Okay.
So instead of like dollar amounts, I think it's better because it scales with you as your income grows to understand. Where your income is, and from a percentage perspective, what categories are you assigning a percentage of your income to? So because if, and it can ebb and flow, and to have a little bit of flexibility and range, I think is also really helpful, because there's going to be some months, everyone has those life experiences where you need new tires all of a sudden, or something goes out like a water heater, or, high ticket price items that
washer breaks.
All of a sudden you're out of, $1,000 to $5,000, and you're like, what just happened? And you feel like your budget's completely blown at that point. And so if you do some research on this, you will find the most methods are based on percentages. So that's a commonality. What I don't like about like the 50-30-20, 70-20-10, 80-20, they just create, 2 or 3 categories, and you can do a lot. I feel like psychologically you can do a lot more finagling in terms of, well, I'm just going to move this over here, and I really didn't go over budget here. Like you're playing a game against yourself.
So you think there should be more categories?
I like more categories.
Okay, so you can finagle less.
So you can have a better system of really knowing what you're spending. So for instance, if in the 80-20 plan is 80% on spending, 20% on savings, which is simplistic, but I think at some point budgeting really works better when you get granular. Because if you're trying to save for a house, if you're trying to save for education, or you want to pay off your debt, you need specific categories. Okay, I can save $50 on my insurance. I can save $100 by not eating out 3 times. You can put more practical, I think, measures for the goal piece of all of this.
Well, don't you think even before we get into percentages or creating the actual spending plan, before you do any of that, you want to start with setting your goal? What are your goals?
Right.
Because that, especially if you're married, are those goals synonymous, the same? How do you map those out?
And before goals, what are you spending your money on?
Yeah.
And so to know where your money is going. And then, so what I did is that's where I started is number 1, where is your money going? So your mortgage, what percentage is your mortgage and homeowner's insurance of your income? Write that down.
Okay.
What are your car payments percentage of your income? Write that down. Because that's how you know, okay, what categories am I spending money on? So you want to know what you're spending on food, groceries, eating out, going to the bar with friends, what have you. Nope, this is not about need.
Okay, not about need. All right.
It's about category.
Okay.
What are you spending a month on your utilities in comparison with your income?
Okay.
So if, are you, at utilities, your house, your not house, your electric, water, heat, what have you.
Okay.
The other categories I like to break down, what do you spend on your health care every month in terms of a percentage of your income? recreation,
Okay.
personal spending. And then obviously we all need that life happens miscellaneous category for those instances so that you don't have to feel like anything out of the ordinary happens, which life tends to hand to us pretty regularly, doesn't blow the plan away.
That's like your emergency fund, right?
Yes.
And now I think Dave Ramsey calls it that. I'm not quite sure what other people call it.
Well, your emergency fund is separate from your miscellaneous.
Okay, so that's not a broken
It's not a budgeting
washer.
term.
Okay, all right.
It could be. I mean, but theoretically, you have an emergency fund of a certain amount, and everybody has a different amount. Maybe you start with $1,000. Maybe you work up to 6 months worth of income.
Right.
That's for someone gets sick, someone loses their job. Those are for monumental things. Miscellaneous, like a 5 to 10% of your monthly income dedicated to miscellaneous, is for those just lower priced items, like a water heater, like a new tire.
Okay.
You know, something like that.
Things that break. Why don't we just call it that? Can that be the category? Things that break category.
Or for me, another tournament. Again, another hotel room. Another, like
That's
it could be
kids
things
sports.
that, kids sports. Some things that aren't necessarily predictable in nature. So when you were saying needs, so there is the 50-30-20 plan out there that you will hear about is needs, wants, savings.
That's what I was thinking.
But I feel like that's where the subjectivity, I think, can kind of
that is a need
undermine
versus
it, because you're like, okay, 50% goes to my needs and 30% of my wants. How many wants do
versus
you
personal
tend
care.
to maybe spend on things?
Yeah.
So it's, I think, harder to stay disciplined
Okay.
when it's those kind of broad strokes.
Okay.
So with that, let's go to some specifics.
Well, okay, so I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to get to this, so I'm not trying to jump ahead.
No, I love it.
But part of, in my mind, if I'm creating a spending plan, then for my husband and I know I get made fun of that I don't have a budget. My husband would die if he actually thought that was the spending plan, which he doesn't know that I call it that now. But what we would talk about first before creating, maybe we're going to adjust our spending plan or what monies we're going to allocate to where in your in some of the stuff that you've researched, where do you discuss what you want to accomplish financially as part of your spending plan?
It's the third step.
Okay.
So first is knowing what you're spending your money on now.
Okay. Gotcha.
The second is knowing what is the range.
Okay.
So what categories should you start to kind of, okay, I'm 50% is on housing. Like if the recommendation is 25%, I just need to think through these things to kind of gauge where you are versus what's typical. And then third, align it with your goals.
Okay.
Because that way you can say, okay, this is what our real life picture looks like.
Okay.
And what are some goals? What do I want to be saving for? What do I want to put in retirement savings? What do I want? And that way you can then kind of shave off in each category.
Okay.
Knowing that you still, those recommendations help to provide, in my opinion, guardrails.
That makes sense.
Because you need to know if are you off the rails in your food I'm off the rails in my food category.
Okay.
And it's really hard for me. That's probably in my budget. The hardest category to rein in. Number one, because I have two kids with DoorDash on their phones, and that's number one on my sheet today of what I'm going to end. But I have 4 kids, and 3 of them are teenagers, and they eat me out of house and home. Like, I don't know how to curb that.
I bet though,
per se,
if you could get rid of DoorDash, because those blasted fees.
I know.
So
that's one. So for my food category,
okay,
because the goal is to get within the guardrails of the recommendations. So that's a goal. So what I'm going to do about that is take an action plan. I don't know if I can get rid of DoorDash completely, because it does help me on nights I'm working late
on your phone.
Dinner.
I would,
but it only
on your phone.
Well, I'm guilty too, because I'll be like,
guilty.
I don't want to cook, and it's 5:30, and yes, we're gonna order something. So I have to figure that out. But 2 nights a week, and get more disciplined about making hot dogs or burgers or whatever is quick and easy.
It's worse for me at the office lately. I'm like, I'm hungry and I didn't eat breakfast, so I'm gonna get a smoothie from Smoothie King, and that turns into a $30 smoothie that really just was $9.
If you get off your butt and drive there, it could be $9. Like, that's another thing. Like, yeah, I know.
But I'm busy.
I know. I know. It's hard.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going.
So yes. So I just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
No,
Smoothie
you're
King.
good. So let's go to the categories because I think that's important to understand these guardrails.
All right.
Okay, so and here's why I like I am using, this is a Dave Ramsey plan. I think from a budgeting advice perspective, he to me includes the most realistic type of guardrails, the most realistic type of categories, the most broad. I don't agree with all of his philosophies. I don't agree with his concepts about credit scores because everyone needs a good credit score. So he's kind of anti that. He tends to want everyone just to pay cash for everything. Well, if you don't build a good credit score, everything you do in life will cost you more.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. I think in April, we're going to dedicate a show to that. Into credit scores and how to build them up and how to protect them.
Yes, we need to do
why
that.
they're needed. But in terms of a budget kind of perspective, I liked his the best because it got granular enough without being microscopic.
Okay.
Where you're not, like, oh my gosh, that's 5 cents over my, category number. And so I felt like it gave enough structure without being too rigid.
Okay.
So here are the categories. Giving 10% of your income, saving 10% of your income. That one, everything I read between 10 and 15%. So I think that's the little caveat. So 10 to 15% on saving, because especially if you're behind the 8 ball in your emergency fund or you're behind the 8 ball in your retirement accounts, you have to have that category inch up a little bit more than just the 10%. Food. He writes 10 to 15%. Utilities, 5 to 10%. Housing, 25%. And what's interesting about that is the average American spending we just said is 33. So we're a little 7% high as a nation in terms of what, and that 25%, I found many, probably 3 or 4 of the experts I studied had that housing category. They recommended the 25% of your income going towards housing.
Okay.
Transportation, 10. Health, 5 to 10. Mm-hmm.
In transportation, are we, does that include, so your gas bill is included in that? Because dang.
So public transportation, car insurance, oil changes, car payment, gas, DMV fees, and parking.
But as gas prices skyrocket, that's like an ever fluctuating percentage, especially now.
Oh, sure. Yeah, 10% is not that high.
I don't know, Dave. That may not work. I'm sorry.
Healthcare, 5 to 10%. Insurance, 10 to 25%, knowing that healthcare is on the rise. Recreation, 5 to 10%. Personal spending, 5 to 10%. You're probably within that for your personal care.
I probably am, actually.
And miscellaneous, 5 to 10%.
What's included in personal spending?
They include personal care, haircuts, Amazon purchases.
And just
blown clothes, shoes,
crash
home
and burn.
furnishings, and home decor.
That's it under personal spending?
Yes. That's a big category for just 5 to 10%.
Well, and that's not near enough listed under personal spending. I'm just saying, there's so much.
Well, and it helps to at least know where the recommendations are.
No, that's
so
good.
That, if you pay off your cars, you could carve out. Maybe transportation only has to cost 5%, where you can move, 5% to personal care or to savings. I think transportation is one of those that is probably the most, over time, you have the most power to make changes in your automobiles. You can buy something cash.
Sure.
You can pay something off.
Sure.
You don't have to get the latest and greatest.
Right.
Just get something who gets you from A to Z if you want to save more. If you want to, have other...
If you want to increase some of these other categories, you could...
Because when you think about it, you can't, insurance is kind of what it is.
And
healthcare is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
But personal spending, transportation, recreation, those things, I think, and obviously food can go out of control. But we're also seeing inflation higher than it's ever been in 40 years, over 40 years.
Right.
And so, these are the times that it's hard to penny pinch because every single category is going up without you even doing anything behaviorally.
Yeah.
You can go to get the same groceries and they're, up probably 10% that they were a few months ago.
Yeah.
And we all see it at the gas pump, especially right now. But to know the recommendations, to build the guardrails and then do the activity. And I did this as well of okay, I know my income,
Mm-hmm.
and so now I wrote down, okay, what is 10 to 15% that I should be spending on food, and I wrote those numbers down, and then I can take it back to my spreadsheet, or however, your bank statement, your credit card statement, however you capture your expenses, and say, okay, man, I'm really at like 20. So I need to, so it breaks it down to more bite-sized pieces of what you need to do to really stay disciplined. And to spend money, to spend, it's all about spending, which is great, but you have to accomplish your goals. We all, most of us want to retire. Most of us want to have, some good trips coming that we save for, or, whatever that looks like for.
Well, I mean, I
us.
like the breakdown of categories. I agree. And I'm with you. I don't agree with all of his philosophies. Nothing against Dave. I just don't necessarily agree with all of them.
Yeah.
And I've actually I took his course years ago. What was that course called again? I forget.
It's all about like the envelope
financial
system.
Yeah, it was the envelope system. And at the time, it actually, I will say this, it helped my husband and I get out of debt. It actually was the catalyst to us getting out of debt, which we thought we never would be.
Yeah.
So
the envelope system, you put certain amount of cash in envelopes dedicated to these categories based on your income. And when there's no money in the envelope, there's no spending in that category.
And I will say, we followed it, not always as rigid, but even in our even in doing it not necessarily as rigid as he developed it, we still were able to get out of debt, and we stayed within a lot of these categories. So, but you're right. Like, to me, when I'm looking at these, like healthcare, like that could be 5 to 10% this month, but if something happens next month, somebody needs a surgery, somebody needs to me, this one, you would have to have other areas, especially that savings option. Right, because again, the savings isn't the emergency fund, right? That's separate.
No, that's separate.
So you still like the savings piece of it. You may even want to err on, especially in a period of rising costs and inflation, moving more towards that 15%, because as some of these that fluctuate that you have no control over, you would need that margin.
What I tend to like to do on healthcare is I like to work aggressively at the beginning of year to save enough in like a healthcare, if you have a healthcare spending account that your healthcare plan allows, or save enough for your maximum deduction.
Yeah,
deductible, so that so that if something happens, you have, and it's usually $5,000, $6,000, whatever that amount is, you have that.
That is so high.
I know.
It didn't used to be that way.
But if you have a family, if you have kids, if they break arms, if they have a surgery, if multiple people, at least as soon as towards the beginning of the year, if that at least is in the bank, you can have that peace of mind, because healthcare is one of those that can just take your legs out if you're not prepared. So I do tend to like to save that part of the budget early on in the year, just for peace of mind, knowing life happens, people get sick, accidents happen. And so if at least I know that maximum deductible that I have to meet is pretty close in the bank, then it's, it kind of sure proofs the rest of my budget.
True. And if
healthcare.
you can, depending upon what your out-of-pocket maximum is, because most people, unless you have 100%, which most people don't, if you have like a $5,000 deductible, 70/30 with an $8,000 out of pocket, if you could set that $8,000 aside. Although I will say this to people that are listening: if healthcare bills, because I used to work in healthcare, not as a clinician, but on the administration and billing side, if you have rising healthcare costs and health bills like pouring in, and I've been there because my son had a traumatic accident, you can get a payment plan. I know we're talking about but if you're trying to stay within your spending plan, you don't ignore the bills, because they're just going to keep coming, but you can get on a payment plan interest-free a lot of times, as long as you don't let it go to a credit agency, with your provider's office, the hospital, anesthesiologist, what have you. You can get on a plan. It shocks me how many people don't know that, so they just ignore the bills because they're like, oh my gosh, I have an $8,000 OR bill. It may not be about negotiating it, but you can absolutely, and ask for discounts. If you are self-pay and you don't have insurance, then a lot of times they'll give you like it used to be 20% self-pay discount, but then they can put you on a payment plan.
That's a great tip from an insider, because and
these doctors do it all the time.
They want to work with you. They want to get paid.
They don't want
to be,
If you can only pay $20 a month, I mean, you'd be shocked. They just want that steady, consistent money coming in on your patient account, and you can do auto draft pay. It's worth it. So
Right.
that healthcare cost, you do have some options there to stay within your categories if you're stretched in your other spending categories as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that at least gets you started. We wanted to at least provide the guardrails to provide what are the averages out there, and then you can do your own exercise of where you're at. So,
But since this was not a topic I was looking forward to,
yes.
I do like spending plan better. My husband would absolutely kill me if he's like, you think we don't have a budget? That's what he would. And we do. We do.
Well, I think it's important that, to your point, like both of you need to be on the same page. What I do see in a
He
lot
just
of
tells me.
marriages is like sometimes you can get into this like, well, you spent this, well, I'm going to spend that same amount now, and it's kind of like this back and forth. I'm not talking about you, but it is prevalent out there of this like competitive and spending report card of like, well, you got to go golfing, so I'm going shopping, and you got to go shopping, so I'm going to go. You know what I mean? Like,
My husband and I pre-negotiate that a little.
That can, again, that can sidestep
You're right.
all of these efforts.
But since this is the B word,
yes,
I haven't done this in a while, but I found some funny memes. I'm going to knock these out real quick because
we'll end with the fun.
We need to laugh.
Yes.
So first of all, if you're listening, you're not going to be able to see these funny pictures, but I found this one that says balancing your budget. And they lined up their coins, like balancing them on the table. I thought this was super funny. They're balancing their budget, their coin. Okay, nobody thought that was as funny as me. All right, this one. This guy, it says he writes out his budget. Food, and this is so my husband. Food, $200. Data, $150. Rent, $800. Candles, $3,600. Utilities, $150. And someone who is good at the economy, please help me budget this. My family is dying. And this guy was like, dude, buy less candles. I thought this was funny because my husband is a candle addict.
Mine is too.
He spends stupid. I know. Ryan is looking at me like. I know. Sometimes I call him my she-man. Nobody tell him that. But he loves plants and candles. All right. Last one. I thought this was funny. You can't go. We don't endorse this, though, by the way. You can't go over the budget if you never make a budget. I thought that was funny.
I think that's your favorite.
It was. It was the first one I printed off. Not to say I endorse this.
Well,
but
and if you do need more help with the budget
spending
plan category, call in or come to our website, copytalkpodcast.com, contact us, and we can work with you and help you with that.
And where can they find us, Shannon? I totally stole it today.
Well, our website that I just said, copytalkpodcast.com. Right. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And obviously, YouTube is where we rock it. And so, Copy Talk Podcast.
Subscribe, please.
Go to
share
any
with your
of
friends.
Those platforms. We are there. Subscribe. Send it to your friends. We like to discuss lots of fun things and keep it lighthearted. But you're smarter for it. And you have a little fun.
Yeah,
that's our goal
and
here.
you laugh.
So
we just want you to laugh and have a good time and maybe learn.
Right.
Yeah, and something in the process. Hold on. Another hashtag.
Hashtag Ryan spends way too much on rent.
Ryan had an epiphany.
Yeah, we each have our goals. Rent, food,
so housing being 50%, is there a... Anyway.
That's I've been there. It's hard.
The real hashtag is hashtag get granular.
Get granular. GG. I like it. Thank you, sir.
Well, I am excited to say next week we start a new series. It's Women's History Month for the month of March. So since we're in March, we're going to be kicking off a new series geared towards women or understanding women. However, if for our male
Get ready,
audience
Ryan.
who can't work on understanding women better, we'll help you. And so that's where we're going.
Yes.
So have a great week, everybody.
Thanks,
we'll
everybody.
See you soon.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated.